Welcome to the Militia gaming community. I'm Trigger Militia, and this video is for everyone who is having trouble drifting in Need for Speed Heat. Let's go! Before I get into the video, thank you so much for deciding to watch this video. I feel so grateful to be able to make content that is meaningful and helpful for the Need for Speed community. Without you guys watching, I wouldn't be able to do this. Also, if you've subbed and haven't been following my Instagram, I'm doing a giveaway there for March. If you're interested, go check it out. Alright, let's get into this. So drifting in this game is unlike anything I've ever experienced in a racing game where drifting is a thing. Many people have a hard time with it and are struggling to get 3 stars on all the drifting events, and thus this video was born. There are a couple of things that you, the driver, can do mid-drift, and there are some things that you will need to change before you ever even leave the garage. Let's start with your car. The way you set up your car is going to have the greatest effect on whether you'll be able to rip long sustained drifts or just little baby short ones. There are only 3 parts on your car that change the way your car drifts. They are the tires, the suspension, and the differential. Depending on the car, one or all of these parts is going to be the problem. Slapping all drift parts on the car and calling it a day doesn't always work and isn't always the easiest to control. And control is actually what you want in order to 3-star the drift sections. Many times there's traffic that will get in the way and you will need to be able to avoid it by going wider or tighter on the drift. And with the setup I'm about to share with you, it's definitely possible. My favorite drift setup is with the Evo 9. I know it seems weird because this is an all-wheel drive car, but this car offers top-notch drift control and sustained slides when set up like this. The 3.8 V8 engine with the highest tier engine parts you can get. Honestly though, this setup works perfectly with the stock 3.8 liter V8 engine as well. On the chassis you want the Super Showcase suspension. This is one of the 3 keys to the build. That suspension provides enough body roll to break the tires loose quickly and easily. The brakes don't matter at all, but the second key to this build is the Elite Drift tires. Again, combined with the suspension, it's easier to break the tires loose when you want to. On the drivetrain, the Elite Plus clutch and gearbox are fine, and then the Sport Drift differential. This is the 3rd key to the build. I can't quite figure out why, but the Sport Drift differential gives just enough power to the rear wheels, but is also just sloppy enough to let the rear end slide out exactly how you want it to. It's a little bit of a mystery, but let's move on to the live tuning settings. Not sure if you're on PC, but if you're on console, the live tuning settings can be accessed by pressing right on the D-pad when you're out of the garage. Make sure you have steering sensitivity turned all the way up towards high and the downforce turned all the way down towards low. Keep traction control off and make sure the drift style is set to gas. Alright, now that you have a machine, let's move on to the advice while drifting. First of all, how you enter the turn will matter. The speed you have and the angle you take sets you up to either be successful or fail for that turn. My biggest suggestion for this is to take this car down to Port Murphy or to the Palm City Raceway and get used to the way it slides. Once you feel comfortable with how far it slides, you will start to understand at what speed and angle you're going to need to hit each corner. My advice is to enter corners wide and then try to hold that wide angle the entire turn. To hold the angle and properly control the car, you need to be turning the steering wheel left, right, all the way through the turn. If you turn it left for a split second longer, the car will move to the left. If you turn it right for a split second longer, the car will move to the right. So let's say you're taking a left turn. While drifting, keep turning the steering wheel back and forth. If you want to make the car turn tighter, you would turn the steering wheel a little bit to the left. If you want to make the car turn wider, you would keep the steering wheel to the right. Now what you need to be careful of is that when you're wanting to go wider, you don't want the car to straighten out, otherwise you'll stop sliding. You want to keep the steering wheel moving from side to side, but just give it a tiny bit of extra time right or left in order to steer the car in that direction through the drift. This does take some practice, but once you get a feel for it, you will be a drifting master. The best course to practice this on is inside the Palm City Raceway. I think I forgot to mention that you need to have the gas pinned throughout the entire turn. Do not let off the gas, otherwise you will stop sliding. It's the gas that continuously sends power to the wheels, forcing them to turn. Now as far as high drift scores go, there are a couple of mistakes that you need to avoid. The first and most obvious one is don't hit any traffic, buildings, or unbreakable objects. Breakable structures are fine, you can hit those all you want, they won't stop your multiplier, but everything else does. Keeping the multiplier going is the most important thing when trying to 3-star the drift. Next, don't be afraid to go off the beaten path. What I mean is, don't be afraid to go off-road where there is space to make the turn super wide and drift a lot longer than it was intended to be. As long as you can make it through all of the checkpoints, there's nothing that says you have to follow the road. And lastly, it is super important to keep the drift going throughout the entire turn and into the next turn. If you make a mistake, it can be very hard to still obtain a 3-star score by making up all of that lost score. So just start over if the first turn doesn't go so well. Also, it sucks to get to the end of a drift section and not get the 3-star score because now you have to start all over again. So know that the drift sections can be taken in either direction. If you're struggling, make sure you give it a try in the opposite direction, even if that's just how you get to the other end to try it again. The extra practice will help. It's also important to chain drifts together. Don't spend too much time going straight. If there's a straight section on the course, make sure you're sliding back and forth until you get to the next big turn. And again, it's very important that you keep your multiplier high. You want to enter each of the long turns in a drift section with a 3 or 4 times multiplier. This technique is just how I do it. I'm sure there are other ways to achieve high drift scores, but this is the method that has worked best for me. If you're still having trouble with a certain section after using this technique, send me a DM on Instagram and I can try to help you when I'm free. Hopefully this helped you out in some way, as that's always my goal. Thanks again for watching. Trigger out.